Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. A federal judge grills federal immigration officials over their use of tear gas on protesters. City council members weigh in on the mayor's budget proposal that calls for millions in new taxes.
This feels like a Chicago fire moment to me.
And how a new networking group aims to strengthen nonprofits. First off tonight, the trial of a downstate sheriff's deputy accused of killing 36-year-old Sonia Massey begins today in Peoria with jury selection. The murder trial for 31-year-old Sean Grayson was moved from Springfield because of the national attention it's received. Grayson is accused of fatally shooting Massey in her home in the summer of 2024 after she called 911 fearing a prowler outside her home. Body camera footage shows him confronting her about her handling of a pot of boiling water on her stove before Grayson shot and killed her. Massey was unarmed and suffered from mental health problems. Security outside the Peoria courthouse today was uncharacteristically tight, with a police tactical team around the building and snipers seen on rooftops. The city of Chicago files yet another lawsuit against the Trump administration, this one over restrictions placed on emergency relief funding. At issue are conditions the federal government is placing on Department of Homeland Security grants. The city is calling those conditions to abandon diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts or lose emergency management funding unlawful. The tens of millions of dollars in funding go toward preparation and response to emergencies like public safety threats and natural disasters. The city joins 8 other local governments, including Boston, New York, and Denver, in the suit. As the Chicago Police Department's annual budget swells to more than $2 billion, the city's top cop promises to tighten spending on overtime for police officers. CPD's budget is set to increase nearly $38 million next fiscal year. And it includes a doubling of the department's overtime budget from $100 to $200 million. That's the first increase since 2020. Data shows the city's overtime spending has ballooned from $139 million in 2019 to $273 million in 2024, a slight dip from the year before. And data from the city's inspector general says the city has already spent $190 million this year for overtime. And a WTTW News analysis shows it's on track to spend at least $241 million by the end of 2025. For more on this story, please visit our website. Up next, a judge questions federal immigration officials about their use of tear gas on protesters. Our Heather Sharon with that story right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Federal immigration agents were on the hot seat today over their use of tear gas on protesters. A federal judge grilled officials with ICE and Border Patrol who defended a series of increasingly aggressive immigration raids across Chicago and the suburbs. After 5 hours of testimony, the judge said she had even more questions about the conduct of federal agents. Our Heather Sharon joins us now with more about today's high-stakes hearing. Heather, so U.S. District Court Judge Sarah Ellis called today's hearing after she said she was concerned that federal agents had violated her court order to stop firing tear gas and other non-lethal projectiles at protesters. Did she reach a conclusion on that?
She did not. She said she needed more information from ICE and Border Patrol about exactly what they're doing on the streets of Chicago. Throughout the hearing today, she seemed to be struggling to reconcile the images that we've all seen of federal agents pointing pepper ball launchers at protesters and tackling people with what she was hearing from 2 representatives, one from the Border Patrol and one from ICE, who said that they had no choice but to take those actions because officers were in danger.
So Sean Byers, Deputy Field Office Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Kevin Harvick of the Border Patrol, they testified for hours today. What did they tell the judge?
That essentially that they had no choice but to resort to tear gas and other forms of less than lethal munitions to make sure that agents could carry out their orders from the president, who of course has said we are deporting all undocumented illegal immigrants from Chicago, as he calls them. But they said that they had listened to her order and followed it, that there was no defiance of her, but that simply the people of Chicago was making it impossible for do their jobs. They had been pelted with eggs and rocks, and that in one case in Albany Park, not too far away from our studio here, people had locked their arms and prevented agents from leaving, and that's when they said they deployed tear gas.
Did we learn anything new about how the federal agents are operating here in Chicago?
Not really. Most of the hearing featured meticulous questions about when exactly force can be used against protesters and, other people around. It's not necessarily clear that Sarah Ellis, the judge, sees her case as sort of evaluating what the Trump administration is doing. Instead, she's trying to make sure that federal agents only use force when they're allowed to, when officer safety is at risk and there are no other options.
So what happens next?
Well, she ordered that 2 high-profile officials with the Border Patrol and ICE come back and answer those questions in depositions. That includes Gregory Bovino, who has been all over the news and is in charge of operations in Chicago, she heard today, and Russell Hott, who until Friday was the head of ICE operations into Chicago. He has now been sent back to Washington, D.C. She set the next hearing in the case for November 5th, after those depositions are taken, when she could decide whether to make her temporary order permanent.
Okay, we'll be keeping an eye on that. I'm sure you will. Heather Sharon,
sure
thank
will.
you so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. That is at WTTW.com/news. Mayor Brandon Johnson is proposing more than $617 million in new taxes, mostly targeting Chicago's wealthiest residents and biggest companies. It's part of an effort to close the city's billion-dollar budget gap without raising property taxes or cutting services. The new taxes would help fund violence prevention and mental health programs, but critics warn the plan could hurt job growth and drive businesses out of the city. Joining us for more are 6th Ward Alderman William Hall, representing communities like Chatham, Auburn Gresham, and Inglewood. And on Zoom, 28th Ward Alderman Jason Irvin, who represents neighborhoods including West Garfield Park, Austin, and North Lawndale. He's also the Budget Committee Chair. And 34th Ward Alderman Bill Conway, representing downtown communities like the West and South Loop. Gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. So I want to go around and get everybody's reaction to the mayor's budget proposal. Alderman Hall, I'll start with you, please.
Well, I think it's a Trump-proof budget. Number one, people are still keeping their job. No cuts in this budget. Secondly, we're maintaining the support we have for mental health services, which is key. Over 30% of the calls to 911 are people that are in mental distress. We're investing in jobs for young people, year-long jobs for young people. Also, what we see is no property taxes, no knick-knack fees. So we looked out for the bread winners in the city of Chicago, which are middle class, those who go to work every day and want to come back home to the homes that they work so hard to keep.
Alderman Irvin, same question to you.
I agree with a lot of what Alderman Hall has stated. Many of the things that he puts on the table, the mayor's put on the table, have been designed not to hurt everyday Chicagoans in their pocketbooks. Everyone has told us about increased property taxes, as well as the assessments that we're seeing we will see at this year's tax bill whenever they show up, and as well as trying to work toward creating some economic parity with some of the larger corporations. So again, it's not something that everyone I'm sure is happy with. But again, at the end of the day, no one wants to decrease services. We talked to our residents about that. They don't want to see decreased services. And we also want to maintain the line on property taxes as well. Understand the head taxes is one to talk about, a little controversy. I think we may ultimately have to make some adjustments there. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure the city keeps functioning, that we keep delivering, driving our crime down, and delivering for our residents.
And we're going to come back to that head tax conversation in just a second, of course. Alderman Conway, though, your reaction to the mayor's budget proposal?
Yeah, at a time we're already very much worried about affordability in this city, I am concerned about all the taxes and fees we are adding on Chicagoans here. And if we look at our city more broadly, we really need to grow the size of the city. And what that's going to require is affordable housing as well as jobs. And this budget really hurts both those things by taking a massive TIF surplus, which often is used in affordable housing, as well as the jobs tax, which itself I worry will be certainly won't create jobs and will add a tax on people that are trying to do that.
So, Alderman Irvin, you mentioned the mayor's plan, which includes a $21 per employee monthly tax on companies with more than 100 workers, expected to generate about $100 million. Tell us about how this tax works and how it gets towards some of the needs that you all are trying to fill.
Essentially, it is a tax on individuals, into companies over 100, which are only looks at 3% of the city's companies. More 97% of the companies are not impacted by this change. Previously, it was at 15 and it moved to 50. This is at 100 people or better, meaning full-time equivalent. So if you have 200 part-timers working 20 hours a week, that would be 100 FTEs as we call them. And again, it's designed toward the things that the people have talked about, which have been focused toward public safety. All of these things that we're looking to fund with this particular set of dollars around public safety that includes summer jobs for youth, violence intervention programming, and some mental health components as well. So again, this is something I believe that corporate Chicago has continuously talked about. Hey, we need to step in, we need to fund, we need to work through some of the challenges when we talk about public safety. This has been a method the mayor's come forth with how to deliver on that.
Alderman Conway, the mayor says that the head tax would affect only 3% of Chicago businesses, but you've challenged that. What is your concern?
Yeah, well, first of all, that math is just not accurate. $21 a month would be $252 a year, 21 times 12. He said it's going to raise $100 million. $100 million divided by $252 a month is about $400,000. There are about 1.2 million private sector workers in the city of Chicago. So I don't really see how that maths. It affects, to raise that kind of money, it would have to affect a third of the private sector workforce of the city.
And do you think this is the right time, to reinstate this? The city had one once upon a time. It was repealed.
Yeah, and they tried this in Seattle back in 2018, and they repealed it less than a month later, based on all the pushback they got from private sector as well as just the taxpayers.
Alderman Hall, what do you make of the argument that the head tax could stifle job and business growth in Chicago?
One of the things I will say is Chicago is a global city, $16 billion economy, top 10 in the world. Corporations want to be in Chicago. United Airlines, for example, one of the biggest corporations that we have here, 60619 zip code, produces some of the longest standing career workers for United Airlines. When companies leave Chicago, they don't have the workforce that follows. They don't have the recruiters to go get people to work at these companies. So again, 3% paying for roads, paying for safety, it's not an ask that's impossible. It's essentially making sure that we get our fair share as a big city with a $16 billion economy.
In his address to the council last week, Mayor Johnson, he framed his budget proposal as a response to President Trump and federal funding cuts. Here's a little bit of that.
The Trump attack on our city is an economic attack on our city. The harsh reality is we're dealing with the Trump cuts. The Trump cuts to public health, the cuts to public safety, to Medicaid, to SNAP, to services that address homelessness and drug addiction, his cuts to violence prevention, his cuts to public education and transportation. This is not rhetoric, this is a reality.
Alderman Conway, what do you make of that framing?
You know what? I actually appreciated Mayor Johnson talking about SNAP and Medicaid benefits. I think we as Democrats don't talk about the tens of millions of Americans that will hurt. And specifically, one thing I did really appreciate in the mayor's budget was what he talked about, how we need to beef up the Department of Law. I mean, the Department of Law is going to be our first line of defense regarding the grants that may be taken to us from the federal government. So, you know, I think we as Democrats have not spent enough time talking about that, SNAP and Medicaid in particular, and how it's going to hurt so many Chicagoans, and I appreciate the mayor talking about it.
Alderman Irvin, the budget also proposes a new tax on social media companies. How would that work, and why do you think now is the right time to start bringing them into the taxing structure?
Well, ultimately, they are benefiting off of the data of many individuals in our city. They're also creating a second public health crisis around mental health. And the dollars targeted from this particular tax are designed to help people who are experiencing mental health challenges. Now, granted, this is the first of a tax of its kind in the nation, but I think it feeds into what is causing the issue. So again, taxing those at over 100,000 users at the rate that's been set forth, I think is a different way, and it's also a smart way to go about this because again, these social media platforms are creating all types of havoc in our communities from a public safety perspective, as well as from a mental health perspective.
Alderman Conway.
Yeah, no, I first would say I can understand why this would be popular with a lot of people. These social media companies have, a lot of times, become platforms of hate and misinformation. But I am significantly concerned that there is going to be federal preemption in this area with the Commerce Clause and otherwise. So I'm happy we're beefing up the Department of Law because they're certainly going to have to litigate this here. It is worth noting in the budget that has not, as put forth now, does not yet have any revenue allocated to the social media tax. Maybe that will be in a future amendment from the mayor's office, but I didn't see that in there reading it this weekend.
Alderman Hall, supporters in the City Council's Progressive Caucus say that this budget is a step towards ensuring that the wealthy Chicagoans pay their fair share. Do you think that's an accurate description?
Well, I think it is accurate enough. Number one, we are the home of millionaires from Chicago all the way downstate. Our governor is a billionaire. He just won $1.4 million playing, gambling in Vegas. And so at the end of the day, a fair share of taxation is what keeps the streets paved, what keeps the lights on, and moreover, it keeps our investments that are essential to keeping Chicago safe. $144,000 is the cost anytime someone gets shot. 10 people shot, $1.4 million. We opened up 4 mental clinics in the midst of budget cuts, in the midst of a migrant crisis. And so those investments is what's driving down violence. That's just one example of how investments from the rich through taxes keep Chicago stable. We cannot have a #1 city that attracts people all over the world without people paying their fair share of city services, as well as subsidiaries that keep Chicago stable.
So the one word that we haven't, that none of us has mentioned so far in this conversation is the P word, and that's property tax.
Yeah.
That is not mentioned in the mayor's proposal this year. It was this time last year. You all unanimously voted it down. It has not even come up in conversation. Is that off the table entirely?
Well, we hope that we can have hopefully a three-peat next year. I mean, not raising property taxes and fees is essential to everyday Chicagoans. Again, in my ward, 42,000 people, the average income is less than $40,000 a year. And so what we must make sure is that people stay in their homes. That's how you have a Trump-proof economy, is you have people working, you have people maintaining their homes and paying their fair share of property taxes without increasing them. The question now becomes, why has there been a backlog from the assessor's office not providing taxpayers with what the cost will be for their properties? We can fix that at a later date, but to keep people in their homes that they can afford and making sure that their neighborhoods look decent for the investment that they pay in their properties is what's the goal. And again, hopefully next year we can have 3 years in a row with no property tax increases.
Alderman Irvin, same question to you. Property taxes off the table?
I think that for this current year, I believe that they are off the table. But I do caution us. We lived this same time in the daily years where we did not look at our property taxes. They were the most stable form of revenue. And when you look at what we did or what we did not do as a city during those years where we kept relatively flat levies, these were the same times we went and sold assets. Now, if we would have had incremental increases along inflation during that same time, the taxes would be the same level they are today, but we still own our parking meters and we still own the Chicago Skyway. So we must not be short-sighted in our thinking. I understand it sounds very good to say we're not doing that, but we have to understand the long-term ramifications of those types of decisions. So I believe that they will be off of the table for this year, but I do believe that it's something that we may have to go back to in the future as we begin to stabilize, unless we see some relief from Springfield and various points and other things. One thing that I will say, and that I look in this budget, and we talk about the TIF surplus, not sure if you were going to talk about that, but that is a record level surplus that we're doing this year. And one thing that I will commit to today is that the budget for the city of Chicago will not leave the Committee on Budget and Government Operations without a signed agreement from Chicago Public Schools as to their pension obligations and what they will be doing for the taxpayers of the city of Chicago. I think it is unfair to the city's taxpayers to leave that level of surplus to CPS without an agreement in place.
Okay, so before I let you all go, we've got under a minute left, Alderman Conway. One criticism of this budget from Watchdog Civic Federation is that the budget doesn't meaningfully incorporate any of the suggestions that came from the mayor's budget task force that was assembled earlier this year, which included property taxes tied to the rate of inflation. Was that task force, do you think it was just for show?
Well, I don't know if it was just for show, but to your point, this is a group that the mayor's office commissioned, and a lot of it's not in there. For example, I mean, they identified in fleet management savings of 16.5 to 30.9 million. They said in terms of office optimization, there would be potential savings of 23.9 million, noting that we have 1,200 more desks and offices than we have employees in a group of people.
So it sounds like you're saying you would like to have seen more of those suggestions somewhere in the conversation.
Let's be clear. I think that in the management ordinance, we'll be seeing additional items related to some of these things. Now, they may not come out of the budget as they state on the paper, but as part of the management and ordinance,
but they could be worked into
changes that will come about. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I understand. I do have to let you all go, though.
They're minimally included at this point, which is the issue.
We will have more conversations as this budget process continues. We have to leave it there now. Alderman Jason Irvin, Bill Conway, and William Hall, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Up next, we tell you about a new networking group working to strengthen nonprofits. But first, a look at the weather. Nonprofit organizations around the country are under stress. They've seen cuts to their funding from the federal government, but the community needs they try to meet are more pressing than ever. The difficult job of running a nonprofit often means there isn't always time to collaborate with other groups. The new networking organization, Chicago Nonprofit Connect, aims to help local organizations break out of their silos and find ways to make the work they do more effective and sustainable. Nick Blumberg recently brought us this story. Here's another look.
What do you think about that comforter?
On a recent morning at Digs with Dignity, workers were combing through their 10,000 square foot warehouse of donated items, getting ready to help families exiting homelessness furnish and decorate their new space.
Oftentimes we come into our families' homes and they're sleeping on the floor. They maybe have one bed, one air mattress that the whole family is sleeping on, and that's about it.
Digs with Dignity partners with social service agencies, meeting with their clients to learn what they need and what they want.
The best thing for us to hear is, oh my gosh, you listened to me. You asked me what color I liked, and that's the color that's splashed all over my apartment. And, you know, my kid loves Spider-Man, and you delivered.
That one's done.
It's not just collaborating with social service agencies. In the past, Digs with Dignity has partnered with organizations with similar missions, like the Chicago Furniture Bank, on volunteer exchanges or swapping needed items.
To be able to come together and unite as nonprofits instead of, competing against each other, because we're not out here to do that.
Those sorts of collaborations among nonprofits may sound like a natural fit, but there isn't always a formal way to make them happen.
We're all doing super important work, and a lot of us are strapped for time, strapped for resources, and maybe we just don't have the time or ability to connect with other people.
Josie Flanagan's day job is with the Honeycomb Project, which connects families with volunteer opportunities. Earlier this year, she put that networking mindset to use by co-founding Chicago Nonprofit Connect, bringing together people from an array of organizations, online and in person, to share expertise and learn how they might work together.
shouting at their events at their organization, what sort of fundraising platform or research platform do they use, collaborations between organizations getting to know each other.
What we've been hearing again and again from folks in this network is I really appreciate the positivity, because there's so much doom and gloom these days, and this is a space where we can kind of take the time to come together and work through these problems collectively.
Christina Lowenstein is co-founder and executive director of the Honeycomb Project, which hosted a recent breakfast event.
We have been working with, now 50 different organizations across the city on a regular basis. And so for us to be some part of facilitating deeper connection between all of these great organizations, and I think is so important.
This feels like a Chicago fire moment to me.
Longtime nonprofit leader Brooke McKean says moments of crisis create an opportunity for organizations to rethink how they operate, incentivizing collaboration rather than competing for limited resources or duplicating efforts.
They're focused on serving their mission and the people that they serve as a part of that mission, and meeting the needs of funders and philanthropy. And when you're on this hamster wheel of the starvation cycle, you don't have time to look up and think, oh, maybe we should work together on this.
I see some really positive relationships forming already, so I would love to see this become something that's long-term and sustainable.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Nick Blumberg.
Since launching earlier this year, Chicago nonprofit Connect says it now has hundreds of members across Slack and LinkedIn, with about 350 different organizations represented. We've got more information on our website. And that's our show for this Monday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and a special time, 11. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports inclusionary excellence throughout the legal profession.